Plan justice requires African urban borders for human migration. Bench 1 is development in borders, catalyzing economic and political stability and self-downturn in the wake of Kabir 22. A safe precision of non-knowledge potential like to establish free movement critical for integrated economic migration to get the development of water trading is to be sensible to develop no firms to boost productivity using demographic progression, migrants, create opportunities that also the effect rates and unemployment, increase revenue migrants, create the tax and native rents, 85 billion families to reduce poverty, return home use skills and wealth to transform economies, free movement people to abstract and become a bit of a time to foster broader recovery, and notice that uniqueness migration is inevitable, but the status quo causes populism, organized crime, instability, and war. Just 22. Border control problematic migration to the way left is given up property will stop pushing the organized crime becomes all migration to criminal exploitative actions professionals the practice of migrants and more risk of dying green labor regimes exploit migrants failure because of mindset and state relation criminalization exaggerated rights or realities of trust over age of regional instability calling vast to regular migration and border security is impossible. 22. National security and Africa laws are made applicable by governments fully equipped agencies force borders like combat against capability corruptionality of foes not meant to check for experts with extra money low facilities communication patrol vehicles no way effective security need cheap batteries highly vulnerable trafficking recent instances of terrorism agencies sales training equipment scams not present database commanding understaffed agency and mitigated staff do not coordinate and African instability leads to great power drawn in nuclear warfare. About 22. Weapons of war is much of African countries the portion of African security increasing 9 times long expansion transnational terrorist conflict for global hegemony for points of war across Africa and Africa's largest trading partner to reflect the rising scope of FDI changes region the nation of global leadership position nuclear arms use and China nuclear arms from different ideas technologies is the rise of new surviving through cities and a tendency towards conflict and but defragmenting Africa is sources of security which solves for about 22. Security is well for the security access security field to bring peace and enable foreign presence and long conflicts and continental approach when security field against international war to prevent defragmenting Africa transported about national security promotion global protection and so on that will change the variety of international negotiations. Advantage 2 is unity. Borders fragment Africa that attributes continent-wide unity of Economic 15. Economic integration, promote cooperation and relation among countries, making giant strides. Movement to maintain integration, can be genuine integration movements, visions of direction, habitat movement, habitat right, loss of mobility, promotion in gender, regional integration, affirmation, cooperation, mutual assistance, selective development, integration, the main consideration for the remove every friendly, full economic union must have free mobility, which argues for the future of regional integration, and complete harmonization is key. All 19. Central challenges is among states free removal and gratification protocols we realize that unanimity among states and content and vision pivot emphasis unanimity classification solidarity security strongly regular migration mobility for trade development and integration will be a function of implementation and Africa can uniquely push global action but it's the most vulnerable to food insecurity was under 22. Ukraine based information structure food liberty resources for key to mitigate expression rate goals of course as vulnerable structure strength and Africa feed the world and network high food insecurity loss large remaining airborne food distribution and other traces the best hope and safe to allow access to commodities materials and jobs and so we're capital to keep food system from seizing up. And unity integrates Africa into global food networks and self-sustainability. It picks a collapse at Arbor 22. Leadership by transformation requires coordinated conversion fast ratification protocols very involving like the transformation is generating new cause market failures, content yet to be operationalized and agriculture trade CCLR, increase food distribution, bottlenecks, availabilizing systems are integrated at all levels, which should be harmonized fairly one country week. Another support Africa based on global food through harmonization food systems like power global system baskets are reduced food goals imperative African countries to begin one voice this is happening on an effective scale. Common in a position to transform food systems that can call attention to the challenges of food in highly African countries and food security would crisis lead to existential nuclear war for 19. If you manage to become atomic food and stress and food or chemical ones that would over war to actively nuclear consultation and releases these stress in terms of depending regimes in Russia, USA, faster would the place on bombs well. Representing the unequal wars out and food insecurity is communities to use uniques and independently the assholes unequal care across border communities and trust is 22. Vulnerability nonsense access to borders different intelligence varieties investment quality standards mobility across borders ensure the going also within one's and like be friendly with the other language is equality inclusion the one knows and contributors or processes to harmonize opportunity level free movement recommended assistance having access to major plans service utilization for the border missions border missions will greatly influence and service availability to rise policy stigma and attribute across border access to privacy seek care as well as miss targets and disease extension for predictive quantitative models from 21. The evidence for utilize systems for disease remain undiscovered simulation of risk disease and infectious disease, lead extinction and emergencies of frequently extinction of global risk of access, smallpox, and Ebola, physiological community increase with mobility, extinction sort of like every person previous to the international games of quantitative because of various characteristics as well as extinction and cooperation and border resolution solved by diversity loss code 22. Collaboration of environmental challenges government for the cooperative transparent ecosystems of organized crime gravity action the extinction from final cooperation of transnational force claims organisms for spreading this being challenged by diversity and African globe creating future glory to choose wildlife and biodiversity key every extinction impact not just disease, agriculture, innovation, the economy, and environmental 11. Extinction consequence of biodiversity is irreversible for future research sensitivity, genetics to secure the expansion of ecosystem blueprints for innovation species, ultimate source of crops and genes, and values and extinction, ecosystem and livelihoods, loss success rates, mortality, economic and psychological the opportunity trade wildlife, and global economic and the family standards maximizing expected well-being when you chose more specifically public actors as well as Rodriguez, which explains how that 15. You just must have resorted to the government to serve dieties when it's such as regard as entity, government for everything as happening to serve an entity, where you only come to the party conscious special basic example. So I'm these communities produce the best or lowest thinking mathematics, having super reducing extenders the top right any career more than 3.15. This is much really with reducing extenders, support each other, higher last super reducing extenders, moving flies would be unrandom than if from alternate and episode of the turning to reducing extenders, the long mission of the lobby, future really matters. For episode marketing, firms, times, it's just prioritize not include impact. So only it's logical. I deleted a card from my doc. I'm gonna see if I can find it before my time ends. Okay, I'll send this out. After urbanization, population growth, global disease that overcomes burnout, and conventional unity, crop solve that. At all 28 infections increase in Africa, public urbanization, global education, policy average, during zoonotic pathogens, African infections, hospital, and bird average, changes, transformative pandemics, conditions likely become common extraction, food opportunity, transmission flows, and food dance, and of course, actually easily mutated, infect humans during troubles in Africa. World health systems lagged great consider for emerging zoonosis, no guidance for prevention, control, regional cooperation, business control, and preparedness for Russian and African bodies, and whenever response system warning against disease. Okay, sorry, I'll send out that card.
No worries. You want to start crossing the meantime?
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
How do borders get open?
We don't specify an implementation.
Who opens that?
Don't specify an implementation. The rest is the value statement.
Huh?
The rest is the value statement. We don't specify an implementation.
Okay, that's fine. The Adiola card, why? Actually, no. The OpenEQ card, why are borders currently fragmenting Africa? Like, what are specific hotspots?
Like hotspots for borders fragmenting?
Yeah, like what are examples of borders fragmenting the continent?
Sure. I know this is pretty asked about, but consistent Google evidence talks about the Uganda-Rwanda border and how transboundary communities there are fractured. I think a few of our cards talk about West Africa and the Sahel as examples.
Okay. Economic instability leads to African instability, yeah?
No, it's not arguing economic instability, it's failure to develop, which I think is slightly distinct.
Does the economy being stable help development?
Sure, but I don't think that's like a link that is necessary for that.
The interest evidence says that focusing on like security is what detracts funds from the economy. How does open borders solve that?
The interest evidence does not say that. It says border controls don't work and that illegal immigration is inevitable.
The interest evidence talks about security, but actually it's not. That's the one thing, you're right. Let's see. Are borders like clearly demarcated in the continent of Africa like on the land?
I don't think that makes sense on that.
I want you to.
I have no idea.
Okay, that's fine. How do agricultural shortages work?
Our argument is that food insecurity creates refugee waves, which cause refugee waves into Western countries, which would use nuclear weapons, and additional hotspots like the Middle East and India and Pakistan. States might go to war with each other over weapons.
Okay, the Kabir just says with food under stress, nothing can be ruled out. Where does that say stuff about the refugees?
Sure. I'll have a plan I'm talking about.
It sounds like
I got you.
Well, refugees fleeing famine and stuff. Is there a link that France is just going to like nuke refugees?
That is one of the impact scenarios, yes. And the card explicitly says it would. Panicking regimes in Russia,
why
US, France would deploy atomic bombs to repel refugees.
Okay, that's fine. Is migration going to, if we open up all the borders within Africa, does migration within, like, leaving Africa stop? Like, are people going to stop migrating out?
The external border is also open,
So it's open for everyone?
Yeah.
So, like, if I went to Africa, I would no longer need like, a visa to get in? Right, I mean, assuming I didn't have a US passport, right?
Visas are weird because they're, like, competition questions, but I know what you mean. If you want to...
Well, like, if an everyday person from, like, non-Africa wanted to go to Africa, it's open for everyone, right?
Yes.
Cool. But only African countries' borders are open.
Yes, every African country opens every one of their borders to every person from everywhere.
Oh, that's a bit, that makes sense. Okay, the annual evidence, can you explain it?
Sure. Evidence says that free movement, adopting the free movement protocol in this case, would be a political watershed moment, create unity on a bunch of issues, and spill over to our borders.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, and that's the card has been sent.
Yeah, I got it already. Thank you, appreciate you. Okay, it's sent. It's gonna be 3, then case is just gonna be advantage 1 and advantage 2. Let me know if that's good.
Give me a sec. Yeah, I don't have it.
interpretation borders is very rarely affirming not the opening of specific set of borders. The opening one test down has determined the gender of your proposal as 16. During the research, very proposal later during civil marriage, the essential opportunity and disable all major business of the war, and determine other test of the units of value qualification, minimal change meaning, and passive borders one, operating on test requires borders of migration, as until this requires borders of migration, means also required borders required borders means opposite things like advertised combination just requires over the borders of migration is substantially changed resolution meaning that the argument violation is like Africa was a process to but if we will specifying borders of opportunity close to the opposite of international borders combined by borders of the neck burden is understood to and debate with the actual and handle anything magnitude for generous species made multiple populations voting issues revived to be interested themselves language and do not refer these abilities are trained not critical because your definition of reasonability is always going to be mine but that doesn't be different from mine depending on what the judge of the estimator is that means that it's not critical and vice versa the model also that links to our office position not weighing anything else as the actual really judging words and resolution the words and negative ground preparation with the actual not the resolution not the beta to future views and basically what doesn't get you it's not simple it's from this usual or as to be fair then see next off. Counting the as far as over borders for intracontinental human migration, the African Union for all borders except for the Republic of Uganda. The Republic of Uganda should close its borders. Open borders by the Ugandan government on 18. You remember 1,000 refugees and refugees taken place. Ugandan government is going to grasp opportunities still by the country's positions for all part of the international community. The idea that Uganda is in need of Uganda or other countries that are medium long-term risk for progressive your future policies as a being a rhetorical exercise is problematic. The switching the Swedes are meaningful social of also for the reinforces that's why Uganda is really red against local settlements communities are going under international legal pressure guarantee the Ugandan model survives when Ugandans and refugees and the economic social and political origin policies and that distraction investing authoritarianism by 21. Uganda has much gained from the Muslim island to refugee international laws like cities and relationship to partners and something similar to international communities and not taken on alone. But we also talk about other issues such as but that doesn't at least all the government of police officers does not speak to external political gains or border organizations to control those who any the national bodies who is watching Uganda the international community will be shamed and the pockets and regional international boards the background of Museveni's power in Uganda by 21. Uganda is now not only the others from Museveni Washington and the focus of the Marine Prime Museveni range extremely double military Western countries got distracted and not very intelligent and deployed area share money returns on Museveni's on the knowledge of such as the remains extremely double Western countries got distracted now with Museveni makes some dollars and Museveni found military fuels and measures and that destabilized the Uganda state and region by the 12. State terrorism is evident in Uganda people have been arrested without being charged with Museveni also presses freedom of speech and association and human rights ability and leadership which resort to conflict Museveni commissioners have been characterized as controls of the military and ensuring all this is sanctioned by the president of Museveni under Saratoga infection and tower and also patients can leaders there's conflict Museveni's ongoing efforts and that's why conflicts competition and reliance on military is the greatest institution of the top areas in the world and local African conflicts escalate mean 13. These wars factors that power needs are over mass power disease will increase instability to response on Afghanistan instability under Pakistan and Syria terrorism and responses line between African and Middle East stop on the weak states already produced for Al-Qaeda war nation of the crime training money transfers of anti-experience by the least environment and section goes 17. The order of Africa's nations is by place small worsen these escalates the local conflicts people losses the influences and supervisors control serving nation the Indian understand that to give rise to global competition to be global powers also cross like their African stability and next up. Now the next out of integrated orders should retain borders should not migration to local racial discrimination filed by Scholars by looking at racial discrimination as well as the court of Scholars ruled by racial discrimination by the Jew Kogan non-discrimination principles of international law African countries decide this ruling on non-discrimination principles and illustration of borders between African human migration and that can be solved only in both CIL and new case reintegrated racial non-discrimination as the EU Kogan North 19. I was not recognized by the board of racial discrimination law CIL and racial discrimination was recorded right now potential board of violence and constitution agreement frameworks of violation of the human rights of the CIL and the United Custom EU Kogan North functions of racial rules that are preempted constitution mandatory everything and estimated claim of discrimination principles these burden to justify the fair treatment of orders of lies included on racial discrimination clause around the lies included and doesn't need actually does next year arguments claims of racial discrimination border provisions are extremely broad and increasing I would also be one. Increase in diversity and states are becoming more open the other than increase in discrimination and crime commitment rule violation of rights are so much that there is future migration racial discrimination defines any section constitution references on race and national ethnic origin is applied to students of public life and applying broadly racial discrimination boards within norm against statelessness Boston Breaker 21. National level results from cities versus racially discriminated authority the national existence the root concept of non property business and property nationality law the argue the states representation the discriminatory laws and the need to advance American racial discrimination cards or about agents about the equality with norm that deprivation of national discrimination the community and struggles particularly international discrimination both like nationality with part of nationality discrimination people under status in Myanmar citizens in India and citizens not sensibility and war and citizens political laws including India and expanded rights to all citizens 19. Citizens made up security, citizens, ability for helping citizens of various citizens, bringing members, process immigration, solidarity, around to communities, depending on going through nationality, citizens, police, accomplice, for error, war, regional, close to international times, and domestic stability comes to returning war goes nuclear or Kashmir and status quo about 22. Kashmir law and Montana, Oklahoma, leaders, mentioned under domestic stability, influence, Kashmir, leaders, abilities, Kashmir, the direction, remaining from the importance of the sensibility, right? If you work case starting development, 1 9, you can turn the other 7 systems, security, international, the economic system, open borders, economic system, security. Second, monitors of all causes regular migration around parallel some of the many, force them to solve all these features and nothing else instability. Interstate 2, insert into the dot. Third, non-equal refugees and numbers that actually skip the third argument. Fourth, lack of poverty, demarcated in distinct borders, guarantees Afghan instability and competence, migration, resources, and opportunities. Signal 12. Fully demarcated borders, instabilities, licenses, the Afghan Navy, border conflicts, resources, building conflicts, market, border conflicts, instability, and Afghan army, population, economy, by shrinking economic resources, and opportunities, not all migration, many agency, conflict, part of the force of fusion, incompatible, national business, mostly with the inclusion of power, commanding words, and property, with defense, the rules, and integration, cut the card, at integration, fifth of line, 800 African workers, we work with can solve works as well. So more than African classes, do as many as 1990, not recognized to the part of the birth rates and instances that we can fashion the work, we are working many more characters in local instances and all Ethiopia and Libya, and some of the world, and the groups can be smaller than really divisible, structure training about as we work, skip the next level requires the unity stuff, start on food, never have to add shortest, make 11. When the shortest of all hours, we're not going to cause the more than possible to be organized, not that we're only going to have economies, not even the ability to reduction of things like the origins, we're not concerned for work, shortage of degradation work, and rather than making us included to because the Turkey and also supports 50, next argument, next is biety, no biety, impact, unseen, meaning actions and memories, here we go in terms of 18. You put the next answer, not good, is the elements and animals, and the motions of the part of mapping, I know, small things, drivers on roadways, local losses, conditions, reverse, damage, impact locals, alcohol, closure, decisions, nations, involved in the air and water, environmental pollution, environmental damage to wastewater, likely to decline from the bioeff. The next argument, the next is disease. Disease hours of working through the sections of holiday 21. 14 years of working, one of the numbers of people who journey these opportunities, so supporting the might be weak, not sure, and 40 self climate change, 2020. This was covered has been all the trend global warming for a question of what's the average of COVID is representing using carbon dioxide, for that is decline to not only short lived time areas emissions by 24%, the US 50%, the EU 27%, cut the carbon 27%, and so the next part ending came early, immediate action functions keep preventing extinction, everybody's level of 12. Part 22. Trying to play a role under masses, and not going to disease, continuity disease, outbreaks, and also rewrite the constant preemptive Celsius and under examiners, how are some of the rewards of much after results in the cascade additional 8 Celsius, because that's rewards, and that's requires wave 5. We're going to skip everything. Let's go back to the second count plan. Just means should be generated 68. This is to be done, and should means must and immediate numbers 94. So we're going to find a construction should is more than desirable education knows that the laws of the immediate in the future.
Okay. Can you send the marked off?
Absolutely. Do you want during crossing before? Before.
Like
that's right. It's interesting music this.
You said it was 10? Okay. Guess it's just taking a while. Okay. Starting the quarantines thing, can you explain how this is often?
The what thing?
Like the quarantines thing, is it often?
It's an impact term.
Wait, okay, how?
We have impact term disease. We say disease is good because A doesn't make distinctions. It's solved by quarantines, but B quarantines are good because it's.
Oh wait, okay, I got you. So this is under the premise that the app like stops diseases from emerging.
No, our argument. Well, the affirmative tries to stop disease and impact as far as your red disease terminals. So the argument that we make is that disease is actually good. We should let disease happen, which means that the F would be
Okay,
then the
yeah,
bad shit.
Okay, the teacher, what is a variable?
Something. What do you mean? You want to
just define a variable.
something that can be genericized upwards. Something that doesn't have a modifier placed on it. For example, A.
Something without a modifier placed on it.
Sorry?
Something without a modifier placed on it. Okay. Open borders, open modified borders. How is
Open borders is a term of art. A modifier would be like A.
Any app that open
the
borders.
open
Okay,
border.
any app that open borders is a term of art.
We haven't read it, but we can in 2NR if you'd like. But I also think it's like fairly intuitive based on
listen. The second counterplan, it seems to talk about Uganda accepting refugees. How is it unique?
Wait, like the first content segment, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You want to count that? Right? What do you mean?
So this card seems to say that Uganda has accepted refugees, that is legitimized the government.
Yeah, so the argument that we make is open borders would further legitimize the Ugandan government because then they're like, hey, look away from all the fucked up stuff that we're doing in Uganda. Look at all these nice things.
Do any of these cards talk about open borders?
Yeah, well, so the Vogel evidence talks about how Uganda has been using refugees as a
Can I get a line about open borders?
The argument that we make is not that it has to be about open borders, rather Uganda should specifically close their borders. Like, closing borders for Uganda is good because it prevents Museveni from being legitimized because he is authoritarian and that's bad.
Okay, gotcha. The second kind of one, third off, I guess this impact seems to be about India. What Ev says that an African court case that is ruling in Botswana
Sure.
goes over to Indian CIO.
So the argument isn't just that Botswana. Well, so the question becomes when Botswana sues South Africa, who arbitrates that, right? And so it would be an international court which would be solved through CIL. It would be the UKOGAN part of CIL. So the argument that we're making is
the counterpart says the court of Botswana should rule it cross-border. Where do you get to international borders?
oh, sorry, I mean international law, right? So the argument is that UKOGAN has a principle of violation of international law, right? It has never been applied before in the context of racial non-discrimination and ensures things like statelessness. But if we have Botswana rule like this, then we have a good chance of making sure that statelessness goes away.
What Ev says it spills over to Indian rulings? Because that's what you're
Sure, that's the Kai evidence, I think. I forget which one it is. It's either the Kai evidence or the ILO evidence. But the argument is that racial discrimination norms are not being followed right now because we just haven't had a UKOGAN case being formed in the context of racial discrimination. So once we have that, we're then able to go and you know how to the Supreme Court.
No, I understand.
No, it's the concept of court.
It's a intuitive argument, but there's no evidence still over, right?
Well, not a specific card, but it's a norm against statelessness, which is the Foster and Baker stuff. We say statelessness exists in India, and so if we build a norm against that, we solve the issue.
Can we start?
I think there's a women's bathroom that way to the right and you take another right.
Okay.
That's also a guess.
Alright, well, I just wanted to let you know that I haven't abandoned yet.
second prep left, sending out the doc. The order is the case, T, Uganda pick, the process kind of I don't know what we're going for.
So just case and that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
This case just comment.
Yeah.
Sorry.
With an overview.
Yeah.
Anyone has it?
I'm good.
Okay, good.
I did not receive the document.
I sent it, so it probably just come to Slack.
If it like takes too long, we can start, but I just like to have it in case I suspect open. Not that I've reviewed, but
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that's relevant in the doc is like the T1AR doc box. That shouldn't be a big deal.
okay, well, we can start.
Okay, cool.
I will check later.
Case taking advantage one going for advantage two African borders harmonize content goals with less African buffer against food shops in the United States against seeking biodiversity loss. I'm not going for advantage one, but I'm going to extend the illegal migration numbers. The interest evidence is that illegal migration is inevitable due to economic incentives that force people to always want to move, and the Phillips evidence is that border security is fundamentally impossible due to a lack of resources in Africa, which we'll all get to in the Uganda pick later. Now, the unity stuff. First, the food wars theory. This is defensive food wars where one state intentionally attacks another state. They conceded the other impact, which is that it causes cascading refugee waves, and Western states use nuclear weapons. This seemed like a silly impact. It's an explicit line in the card, which was just conceded the biodiversity stuff. This is this card they read as an answer to tipping point, which is not our scenario. Our scenario is ecosystem services. Each specific animal provides specific biodiversity services that can lead to solutions to disease, agricultural productivity, etc., which are all conceded impacts. The disease scenario, the disease, quarantine solves disease. Even if this is true, that's our internal link. The evidence that I read at the end of the 1AC says that unity is key for Africa to cooperate over stuff like quarantine and lockdowns, which means only if we solve it. Second, they conceded the Kim evidence, which says that disease is existential. New quantitative models prove that, and they've also considered that you should prefer predictive and quantitative models, which their evidence isn't. This isn't offense for them because this would only be offense if our scenario was that we stop diseases from emerging. That's not our scenario. Disease emergence is inevitable, which means that the impact turn is not unique. It's just a question of whether we can solve for it or not, which is how the app solves it. This just isn't offense for them to teach us. First, we mean it's not a very plural. Open modifies borders. Open is obviously an adjective, so it modifies borders. This is not an intuitive argument that they can just get away with, so they should have to read a card counter what is the last specification, whether generalizations are true or not is context dependent, i.e. default and pragmatics testing within 18. That means it's true for the logical values, but the extreme flexibility, generalizations, different structural, but the structural unspecified and the connection between abundantly reading or models, context, and listers, prior knowledge of the property and standards. One clash allows in depth in the particular piece of literature, which allows for more nuanced reading because each policy is different. They vastly overlook positional the app two picks. The name will pick out of small countries, borders, which makes tiny debates inevitable about their models. First, because the negative shockingly good generics like the population or diseases has the actions loses the picks pretty functional ones. Only so many apps have impacts on solvency. I think small apps which generics because they have no options specific to that policy. Even if they have a big case, it doesn't matter because the same arguments apply to all of those apps for reasonability. Everyone specifies. So even if reasonability is true and absolute, it's not in this round. Semantic nuances aren't good enough reason to end a substantive debate. You gotta pick. It doesn't solve case A, unanimity is key. That's when you see idealism, the political signal of harmonized development and cooperative goals. Hold on, it's called that B disease to transboundary communities get court here now, which makes them a weak link for emerging kind of makes picks into me that the 20C Saratoga, which ironically is actually about the Ugandan-Rwandan border. So it's just oddly specific. The C point is food systems are integrated through trade. Holdouts called leverage and progress in every other country. That's the 1AC evidence. There's also no border security thumps the net benefit. That means that refugees will always get into Uganda anyway, which means they'll always garner credibility of accepting refugees. this counterplan doesn't compete on text, just like the counterplan, which we'll get to in the other counterplan. Their net benefit scenario, it's not reverse causal. There's no evidence that lack of migration causes international abandonment. They've said that migration causes international support, but that doesn't mean that if there stopped being migration, there would be international abandonment, which is what they need for their impact to go through. Existing refugee waves should dump. They've read evidence about how past refugee waves have given Uganda legitimacy. There's no reason sustained refugee acceptance is key. If past refugee waves should have done the trick. I also conceded no escalation from Africa war on the case page, which means there's just not an impact to the flow of the process counterplan. Perm and the counterplan minus the first sentence, the last clause, the text is in the document itself, literally everything. The case gets filed, the courts rule, and the country cite it. It just doesn't have it just doesn't condition open borders on it. And perm to counterplans must compete off text and function. It's key to thinking about desirability and preventing picks out of single words of pure classes and artificial net benefits with no opportunity cost. I don't want to locate an incentive to write sloppy generics that don't test the case. But we when it comes that it disproves that it's either that's good because it checks the Germanics and net benefits. It also doesn't solve the Afro filing a case against South Africa and then ruling on it in its own domestic court would be awful for unity. You perceive as an international spat between Botswana and Uganda. The app also solves the impact because open borders obviously solve statelessness. Lastly, they don't have a threat that spills over to Indian CIL specifically, which is what they need for their impact. Let me just see if I missed anything. Okay, I don't think I did, so let's see if I can get through this in time. I can find a combo block in time for this now.
We really just have a lot of comment block.
About the document.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what it already. Does the perm inserted in the doc result in the same thing as the app? Or the counterplan?
What?
Does the perm that's inserted in the doc result in the same thing as the counterplan?
Yeah.
And it's sent text.
It is sent. The text is sent.
It's sent?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Or let me make sure.
Oh wait. But the permutation competes off the text.
What? The perm doesn't need to compete. The perm.
Why? Okay, that's Uganda. Okay. Can I borrow your stand?
Yeah,
My
sure.
shit's falling apart. Literally. For real. Let's ignore all the loud sounds. My apologies. Okay. Right.
Uganda's process case.
What's up?
Uganda process case, right?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I took it. Is anyone not good? Cool. The Ugandan, since we were not going to go for the interpretation of this competition, going for the non-discrimination company. Overview: the Canada keeps restrictions on the borders of South Africa. If you have to come from Botswana, files claim racial discrimination at the border, then has the country of South Africa rule that racial discrimination at the border is a fundamental violation of international human rights. So this Canada then said all the African countries drawn this non-discrimination principles from the ruling to open borders with each other. That obviously competes because the Canada says that keeping borders closed is good in the short term. We do keep them closed in the short term, then we eventually decide to open up the borders via the ruling that happens in the courts of South Africa and Botswana. Or one is the ILO evidence is predicted and says that racial discrimination cases are extremely common with broad grassroots claims. That ruling creates a huge Hogan norm against racist nationality laws to the root cause of statelessness, and that it goes customary international law, which is an international norm. Yes, CIL isn't a written down norm, but it is a set of codes that all countries follow, which then goes on to solve statelessness, which causes instability in national sports and geopolitical hotspots that go global and draw new convention powers. In particular, we have isolated India's exclusion of 1.9 million people in Assam, which causes domestic instability and protests. That causes Indo-Pak war, leaders saber battle over distraction from domestic issues, escalation goes nuclear. The only way to solve this through the Council is we set a code in international law that there's no way for you to be able to violate the Hogan principle, because racial discrimination and Hogan would not have been applied together, but in the world where we do with the Canada, that means that we're able to solve that. The Canada solves the African. The African countries use the ruling as precedent to open borders. That solves all their internal African unity and harmonization side. Insufficiency agreeing the Canada needs borders closed in the short term for one country to generate a ruling on their impacts from happening tomorrow. We can quantify solvency tests, and then definitively always 2% less solvency. I.e., when they go for that 2-year argument, when they extend the 1-year argument, there's going to deck unity. The way you should think about it is Africa holding out for a couple of weeks, going to trigger the impact. Hopefully, probably come to the same conclusion as me that no disease outbreaks are going to happen in that amount of time. There's no biodiversity. There's going to be loss, which is going to mean that the Canada can't solve the line by line. The permutation is in response to our agreement about open borders for human migration. Our argument is statelessness stems from ambiguity around borders, which means that we need rulings to be specific to open borders. Removing line about open borders would deck the entire part of the Canada. The permutation can't solve. B point: the permutation doesn't result in the CIL norm being filed, because the argument that we made is that South Africa has to retain border restrictions, but insofar as you can have the first line of the Canada context, that means that South Africa won't retain border restrictions, so they're going to have Botswana people sue South Africa, and the rule of South Africa hasn't even closed their border, which is that there's not going to be a valid court case. That independently means that the reason the Canada, and that means that the Botswana court has no grounds to sue and won't be able to establish a credible norm. The reason that the Canada is good because it means that we say a credible norm and a credible court. The permutation would also deck unity. It means that even if we go ahead and even if you grant them fiat and say that yes, they get to fiat, that the court's going to rule the way of the Canada, that those courts are then going to be treated in contempt, because people will be like, you're a fucking dumbass if you ruled in a world where the open border was already open and it wasn't even closed, which means that that's going to deck that's going to sort of deck perception of the court and decks unity, because people are going to think that sort of South African courts are corrupt, which for a country as big as South Africa and East Coast of Africa is going to mean that there's low risk of solvency. The permanent Canada, we do compete on tax account, has nothing to do with tax for we're not playing plus every other country opens borders afterwards, plus we read evidence that should is not necessarily immediate, but we ever should is immediate, which means that their affirmative has to be immediate, but the comment is immediate means that we compete in the stock motion, the same thing, and the implementation of severance account that requires at least one closed border between the African countries like South Africa in order for there to be a dispute claim, but the affirmative opens all borders. We feel that South Africa has closed borders while other countries open theirs. That means the permutation severance out of South Africa's borders being open, which for the Canada to occur, the borders can only be open after the dispute. This resolves severance is a voting issue. This is an independent reason they should lose. It results in infinite asterisk and shedding parts of the affirmative de-link neg off, which is shooting at a moving target, because the interpretation of the 1EC is only going to change by the 1AR, and then again in the 2AR, which is fundamentally impossible. There is next strategy. We look at new 2AR options, the remainder of the affirmative border, we get a 3AR against whatever they switch up in the 2AR. Horrible and grand some limit boards good. The permutation does not apps that open 10% of borders. Then we see no opportunity cost because of office body generic stance. Opportunity cost, we don't have spotty generics. This is all capital that we just broke. And this does solve all the apps. Their entire argument about why they get permutation based on spotty capital is assuming that we don't solve the entirety of the affirmative, but cross the analysis from the overview about how we solve 100% of the affirmative, or at least sufficient amount of the affirmative to mean that the permutation should be legitimate. Even so, the permutation has noted that no they should reject it on face. Independently, they say it would be bad for unity, but no, it would in fact strengthen unity, which was the direction of case solvency, because we're not going to make sure that we're going to make sure that we set a coherent norm throughout the entirety of Africa, that every country follows her to open their borders all together based on this norm of rule of law. Obviously, rule of law and codifying international laws is going to be way more sort of persuasive than just fiating into existence. That proof everyone opens their borders because there are ways to circumvent that, etc. CIL also has the added impact of making sure that it's going to work in the long term, because then there's a risk of circumvention without it. Because CIL is bringing doing things like CBWs, etc. That it's never been circumvented. Which that CIL is the strongest sort of impact. But even so, the next argument agrees that the app solves statelessness. No, it doesn't. It might solve an Africa because you open all the borders, but it doesn't set an international norm. The argument that we made is that CIL specifically is key for the UCOG international norm, and the way that CIL works is that it is international, as a codified law that we talked about, that literally everyone is going to follow. That means that India and Pakistan no longer have a choice to deny the Assamese people from coming into India, but rather they'll have to finally let them in based on the international law, because it will be a violation of statelessness. Then the last argument makes that there's no argument for why it spills over to Indian CIL. It's because there's no Indian CIL. There's just international CIL. CIL does not vary from country to country. It's not customary Indian law. It's rather it's customary international law. The argument that the counter makes is that sending a norm for UCOG in the Botswana court would then become part of that informal international code that everyone follows, which will spill over to India and Pakistan and solve statelessness for the groups in Myanmar and India, like especially the Assamese groups that we've identified. It's the same way that if the US would rule on CIL, other countries would follow it too. Similarly, if South Africa rules on CIL, it becomes part of the international norm and code, which means that every other country is going to follow. That means you should be pretty comfortable voting negative on this point, because the only thing they have is a permutation. But we read evidence why both the permutations are A, severance, and B point just don't solve any part of the counterplan. So there's no net benefit, they're actively harmful. And as far as there's just no solvency tests on the process counterplan, you should be very, very skeptical of any two-year extrapolation. Prevent the tumor like a newborn puppy, i.e., if you can't draw a line from the one area to the two-year over the exact argumentation and extrapolation, you should reject market flow. The case page real quick, the food no impact actually doesn't say this is defensive food war, but no, it's arguing about how there's never going to be war on the basis of food. They say there's going to be refugees, but they haven't explained why famines going to cause people moving to places. In Africa, the norm is not that people move to France and they've been moved. That would mean the difference is not unique in the Arabian and Horizontal evidence. It still responds around there's going to be intervening actors. In terms of the Africa specifically, can solve biology impact, and so there's all solvency and diseases solved by quarantine as driven by COVID here.
Okay. I want to step on this, or not. Yeah.
No worries, it's been a long day.
Okay, what was the warrant for why the ruling needs to be open border specific?
Sorry?
What was the warrant for why the ruling needs to be open border specific?
I can't hear the word saying before open borders.
What was the warrant for why the ruling needs to be open border specific?
Sure, on the communication?
Yeah.
Yeah, the argument was that they have to retain border restrictions, but if they don't, then like there's no grounds to sue. Just based on the rest of the counterplan. Plus, the argument was that statelessness stems from a question of border ambiguity between Assam and India. So it's like the top right of India, I think.
It's going to be Honda. No, it's case. It's case then.
Case in Canada?
Yeah.
Genuinely, for a second, I was like, wait, that is missed part of the 1 8 hour review. Alright, but one bit.
Good.
Case diseases that are motion visible and don't burn out are coming out of the app solve A. Unity. What is bets is coordinated public health responses solved only if they're taken at a multinational level. The assets state that cooperation be transboundary communities. If they're forced to go to one country's health system, they just won't go at all. That makes them a weak link for pandemics over which the app solves by giving countries a choice. The quarantine argument was definitely made after time, but I'll answer it anyway. Firstly, it's totally irrelevant because we've read new studies that are both predictive and quantitative, which has been flagged in the 1AC and 1AR as reasons you should prefer, that says diseases will cause extinction. Quarantines don't solve because Africa needs to be able to coordinate those quarantines, which they aren't able to do absent the app. And for other countries outside of Africa, coordinating doesn't help because Africa will be a weak link in the chain essentially that keeps spawning global existential diseases. Only other countries can only beat back so many. That comes first and is more likely A, only via the uniqueness argument. 1AC that explicitly says more pandemics will come from Africa due to urbanization and population growth, and COVID proves B. 70 years of nuclear deterrence should make you skeptical of their impact, but the conditions for existential disease only exist now, and it turns nuclear war. Disease creates massive instability and state collapse, and it puts every country on edge and makes them go to war anyway. The counterplan. First, the solvency deficit. They misunderstood the solvency deficit, which is why the only answer was that the time frame deficit is 2 weeks, so you should reject the solvency deficit. That's not the argument. The
sovereignty deficit is not based on time frame. It is based on unity. The signal of Botswana challenging South Africa in international court and then ruling on it from their own domestic court would be awful, because it would be Botswana circumventing any sort of international negotiation, or like circumventing the ICC, ICJ, and just saying, no, we're going to do it in our own court and rule that what you did was illegal or whatever, which is a horrible look for unity. It would cause a massive division between Botswana and South Africa, which kills any coordination on any other issue, especially disease, which causes extinction. This isn't time frame based. Even if it kind of results in open borders 2 weeks later, the kind of unity will be shot long term because of the kind of poor relations of that like mishap, which is the sovereignty deficit, which I think is just largely misunderstood by the TNR, the PERM. I'm going for the PERM first. Justice requires open borders for human migration. Then Botswana files their claim against South Africa, rules that cross-border racial discrimination violates, etc., and all African countries cite it. It solves everything. The only answer they have is that the ruling needs to be about open borders. No, it doesn't. You need to read their evidence and find me a line where it says open borders if you're going to vote on this argument. All of their evidence talks about cross-border racial discrimination, which can exist post-AF, None of their threats say open borders. The borders post-AF, the borders still exist. They just be open, and racial discrimination could occur at open borders, which would be the basis of the court case. They spent a bunch of time talking about how the case would be thrown out for contempt of court or whatever. No, there would be valid grounds for the case. It would just be racial discrimination happening at open borders, which would be the grounds for the court case. Botswana would file it anyway, etc. There's no reason the ruling needs to be open borders specific. They say there won't be any racial discrimination. No, open borders doesn't even solve racial discrimination, and if it does, we need to ask solve the counterline. Oh, and the last thing they say is there's no net benefit to the PERM. PERMs don't need a net benefit. They're a test of competition, and there is a net benefit, which is the act.
Good debate.